Today we have a very special guest with us, Tania, who is from Dunedin in New Zealand. She is a professor of sports coaching in the School of Physical Education, Sport and Exercise Sciences at the University of Otago.
And so I'll give you an example of some work that some colleagues, Gulich and colleagues in 2023 did. And they were trying to look at that question: to what extent does pathway to senior elite success build on junior elite success? So they're looking at, is there really a pathway? And a number of people, and Joe Baker's work, he's worked with colleagues in Canada that's looked at some of the work that's challenged that pathway concept. And so this specific work that I'm just going to give you an example of, they looked at 110 samples, which totaled up to be 38,383 junior athletes. So there's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And 79 samples, which was 22,961 senior athletes. So they had, say, 38,000 junior athletes and nearly 23,000 senior athletes. And they looked at their trajectories, looking backwards and looking and where did they end up. So they found in their research that there were those populations of those young ones who were successful in the junior space did not correlate to those who were successful in the senior space, and those who were successful in the senior space didn't correlate with the junior space. So there was two separate populations. So their statements were: the most successful junior athletes do not achieve equivalent competition level when they are senior athletes, i.e. international competition level at junior and senior. There's very few people that go from junior World Cup champion to senior World Cup champion. And therefore, the most successful senior athletes did not achieve the same equivalent status when they were junior athletes. So they weren't a junior and then a senior. So I think that's a big sample population, and I think that's what we want to start thinking about. There isn't that linear pathway between junior world champs and senior world champs. Okay, we might get the Tiger Woods, and I'm not sure what examples there are in India, but there will be lots of examples in India, I'm sure of it, who did a whole range of sports, like yourself, you were talking to me the other day, you did a range of sports before you came back to tennis, table tennis.
Correct.
So, yeah. And so I think we get preoccupied of trying to get the kids into the sport and expect that there'll be a nice sort of linear pathway out the other end. It doesn't work that way.
The early bloomers are generally seen not reaching to the top maximum times. Those early bloomers, the early people who start performing. So they actually, at the top, at the international or the senior level, very few actually reaches till the time to keep the sustainability of all the things, whether it is mental, whether it is physical, whether it is all other areas which are important. So Tania, what are the talent identification process or models in sports?
Well, I think one of the models that the phrases that get used a lot is long-term athlete development. And that is sort of came over to the West from the Cold War, when the Berlin Wall fell down, the communist countries opened up. A lot of East German, a lot of Chinese coaches came to the West, and maybe to India, I'm not sure. And so a lot of Western organizations thought that they had the good oil because of how successful they were in the Olympics. But a lot of the long-term athlete development models were quite linear and quite siloed, and you had to go through particular ages and stages. So that phrase, long-term athlete development, is used a lot, again, without little understanding, I think. So the assumptions of that really is that if you're winning a running race at 10, and that you're going to be winning the running race at 25. It tends to be a rather static approach to athlete development. An alternative one to look at that is what you would be focusing, calling a much more dynamic model. So it's still focusing on sort of performance indicators like physically fit, strong, fast, focused, committed, agile, all those types of things. But it adds another layer. So you want to have a desire to learn, to be a good listener, to be focused, to learn from mistakes, to be prepared, to be to persevere. And so the models that are becoming more dynamic recognizes both the performance and the development focuses. So if I can share a model with you that Joe may have already shared with you, I'm not sure. Let's let me, if I can just bear with me while I share this slide. Can you see that slide?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so this is a development model of sport participation, and it was developed as a consequence of interviewing thousands of athletes who had made it, who were at the elite level, and retrospectively looked at what did they do to get there. Because you can't ask a 5-year-old what their trajectory is. You always have to work backwards. So this is this is developed over years. Did Joe talk about this?
Yes, he was not specifically on this because our topic was something different. It was about the environment of sports.
Okay, so what they found when they were talking to elite athletes across a range of sports, team sports and individual sports, was that the majority of them sampled. They had a range of activities from ages of 6 to 12, and they had a high amount of deliberate play, which is like pickup in the backyard. So you'd have a cricket bat, and you might have your siblings, or you might have your neighbours, and you'd just be playing. You wouldn't have a coach. You wouldn't have adults involved. And we just call that pickup or backyard cricket. And then there was low amounts of deliberate practice, and there was an involvement of a range of sports. And so after that, when you got to sort of 12, 13, that's when you started to work out whether you're going to be a recreational player and you just carried on with mostly deliberate play and recreated, or were you going to start specializing? And you might maybe then have a balance between deliberate play and deliberate practice, and you might start to specialize a little bit in maybe 2 or 3 sports rather than play everything. And then at 16, often you're coming through puberty at the other end, then you might start to say, okay, I'm going to specialize and invest in another 1 sport or 2 sports. And there was more deliberate practice, and then generally those people then went on to much more of a at the elite performance. And there was those who did things like gymnastics, who tend to have a much more early specialization trajectory because of the nature of the sport. But I think this here has well, I know it has informed what's happened in New Zealand. So if I can give you that example, this is how New Zealand has changed. So when New Zealand was looking at a talent pathway, probably in the mid 2000s, they were using long-term athlete development, in particular in relation to Balij, who's a Hungarian, his ideas. And it was very much siloed and compartmentalized around stages and stages and ages of development. But once Cote and Fraser's work looking at the developmental model of sports participation, once they put their work out there, New Zealand's Sport New Zealand, which is the organisation that oversees sport in New Zealand, decided that we wanted to be much more flexible. So there was those early stages, but there was recognition that the development could go from participation to performance to excel, but across back to participation, and so there was a lot more entry points and exit points for people to come and go. And so we've got quite a few examples, and they are promoted in New Zealand, of athletes who have been maybe national representatives or even international representatives in more than one sport, because to show that it's not you don't have to have that sort of linear pathway from the time you're 5, 6, 7 all the way through. So that's that model on my right hand side is what New Zealand looks at when we were looking at talent identification, to show that there's a little bit more flexibility in that pathway.
Okay. Very nicely put.
So I'll just unshare that, and then I'll so hopefully that gives a wee bit of an insight into models.
That's too much deep into it, and it is very important for the students and parents and the coaches to understand the short-term athlete development and also the long-term athlete development, and what they are targeting for the students. And that leads to my next question is, how do late developer emerge and early developer really make it to the elite ranks, which you have just touched on the topic in between.
Okay, so I think the late developers emerge because they're left alone. I think if we think about stereotypically what happens to the early developers, they get put into academies, it's very coach orientated, and they're told what to do, and they're focusing on pretty much the physiology of the movement, or the biomechanics of a movement. Whereas those late developers probably don't get the same attention. So they go away, and if they stay in the sport, they might play more pickup backyard cricket or whatever it is, and they become problem solvers, and they have resilience because they've had some knockbacks, and they yes, so they generally don't have the pressure. They can do more than one sport, so they can transfer their understanding from one sport to the other. And so I think, and there's a quote from a Croton who talks about as I said, becoming problem solvers. They fall in love with the process of learning about the sport, and he gives the example or an analogy of a child learning a video game. Generally, children do not look up the manual; they just play. And in the process of playing, they learn about the game, and they can probably become quite good at the game. And it's the process of learning about the game. What does this do? What does this do? What can I do here? That they enjoy. If an adult told them to sit down and I'll tell you how to play this game, they wouldn't enjoy it as much. So I think that's the difference between early developers and late developers, and how late developers can actually come into their own if they're kept in the system. Because they learn to become problem solvers.